Hey everyone, it's Matt from Neewer, and today we're going to build a cinema rig for our camera. So thanks for being here. This is the Neewer Academy. All right, so we have a lot to cover in this video. Everything on the table in front of me is going to be a component of our cinema rig. So you can see we've got a lot of stuff to attach. So today I'm going to be building this rig for my Sony Alpha 7 IV. And this cage I've got has the ability to add accessories to the left side as well as the top. And that's important for this build. Some of these cages are only like 3/4, keeps them nice and slim, but this build uses both of those accessory mounts. So I'm going to go ahead and get this attached. This attaches with the screw on the bottom, as well as a little screw that goes through one of your eyelets here for a strap. So let's go ahead and get it attached. All right, so now that both of those screws are tightened, I've got my cage attached to my camera's body, and the next thing I'm going to do is attach the base plate. So one of the most common things you're going to see on cinema rigs are the rails that are going to be running under the bottom of the camera. And in order to get those attached, we have to put a base plate on. So this is my base plate right here. So you'll see this has a few screw holes. I'm just going to line up a couple of those up, center it on my camera body, and put those screws in. And once those are tightened, it's going to give me that little base plate that I can then slide my rails into. So I've got two of these rails here, and I'm going to put them kind of centered on my rig. These are easy to slide back and forth later and tighten them in. Now, one thing I want to talk about really quickly, this is going to be so important. These little toggles that you have the ability to change the orientation of the handle. So that comes in really important if you're tightening something, and let's say the handle is kind of pointing down. Well, you can't set the camera down on a flat surface if that little handle is pointing down. And the way you fix it is there's a little spring inside each one of these, and you can just pull up and you can orient it in any direction you want, and then you can continue to tighten. So again, if it was tightened all the way like this, and I can't set my camera down, then I can just lift up and I can reorient it until it's exactly where I want it. So let me go ahead and put both of my rails on. Get them tightened up. All right, so we've got our cage, we've got our base plate, and we've got our rails. The next thing we will add, I'd say, is going to be our side handle for our rig. So for my cinema rig, I'd like to have a handle on the side of the camera. We're going to put a handle on the top too, which is really good for like lower angle shooting, but I really like to have a second handle on the side so that I've got a nice firm grip on the camera. I can kind of brace it against myself if I want to get stable, and I just find them to be very handy. So on this side of the camera where we've got these little screw mounts, we're going to put this handle. And the way we're going to do it is by installing a NATO rail. So let's do that right now. Okay, so once my rail is attached to the side of my rig, I can go ahead and attach my handle. So I'm going to go ahead and pop it on there, slide it down, and then you can see I've got some flexibility on exactly where I want it to be. So then I can just tighten up that little toggle, and there you go. So there's our handle attached. I like having that over there. That gives me the option of a grip. It gives me a good little bit of stability while I'm shooting, and I love having it. So there we go, handle attached. The next thing we'll do is a lens support. All right, so this next accessory isn't really necessary for my current lens, but maybe you're going to be shooting with something longer, something heavier. You want to take some of the stress off of the mount of the camera. So we've got this little lens support mount, and we can attach this underneath the lens to, kind of brace it to make sure that the lens has support. So I'm just going to slide this onto my rails. I'm going to position it at a spot on my lens where it's not going to interfere with either one of my rings, either my focus ring or my zoom ring, and tighten that up. And again, if you find that your toggles are handles are pointing down, you can use that little spring to reposition them. Then I'm going to turn this upside down. I'm going to find exactly where it makes contact with my lens and then tighten it up. So there, you can see right inside we've got our lens mount, and it's right there at the end of my base plate. All right, so we've got our handle, we've got our cage, we've got our plate, our rails, now we've got our lens support. The next thing I'm going to attach is going to be the handle that goes on the top. So we'll do that right now. All right, so the next thing we're going to attach is going to be a handle that we can mount on top of the camera to really give a lot of versatility in the way we can hold this rig. This, I think, is one of the best little things you can put on a cinema rig. It really changes the way you can hold a camera. So you can see on top of my cage, I have a series of holes right here. And this is where I'm going to be mounting my handle. Now, the handle that I have goes on with a NATO rail. Some of these you can see right here, I've got a mount for an airy mount. Any of these will work. I'm just going to attach my NATO rail right here, center my handle, and then tighten it up on the handle itself. With my NATO plate attached to the top of my cage, I can just take my handle and slide it right on. Then I'll just tighten it up. And now we have another way to grip our camera. So we've got our standard grip, we've got our two-handed grip with the one we've attached, and now we have this nice grip on the top to allow us a lot of range of motion for low angles and stuff. It also is going to give us a convenient place to mount our monitor, which is what we're going to do right now. All right, so now that my handles are attached, I'm going to attach my monitor, and I'm going to attach it up here to the handle. Now, the really cool thing about all these rigs is that you've got so many different places to attach things. So you've got airy mounts, you've got cold shoe mounts, you've got NATO screws, you've got all these options. So you can really customize this to whatever you like. Personally, I like having my monitor up here, so that way I can see it when I'm hand holding this way. I can see it when I'm getting those low angles. So this is a really convenient spot for me. So the way I'm going to be attaching it is with one of these. This is a little monitor mount, and it's a pretty simple one. This only has one action. This only tilts, and it's just going to attach to my cold shoe. So I can just put it right on, tighten it up. And then once it's on there, I can grab my monitor and I can attach my monitor right there to that screw. All right, so our monitor is now attached to the top of our camera, and you can see I've got this little toggle right here, and that just gives me that nice fluid tilt to put it wherever I want it, right at the tip of my finger, and just tighten it back up. So we're gonna worry about hooking up our HDMI cable and our power at the very end when we do our battery. So now we're gonna do our follow focus. All right, so the next thing I'm going to add to my cinema rig is going to be a follow focus. I love having follow focuses. This just gives you a really convenient place to control your camera. And I have a decision to make with this lens, since it's a zoom lens. I can either attach this to my focus ring or the zoom ring. And for my build, my rig today, I'm actually going to use this on the zoom ring. So to get started, we're going to take this little gear thing we've got, and I'm going to attach it on the lens. I'm going to get that on there and tighten it up nice and tight. And once you've attached it, I like to just grab it by that and move the ring to make sure that it has a good strong grip. Then I can grab my follow focus and slide it right along my rail and then match up my gears. And then make sure my toggle is nice and tight. And once I've got that all tightened up, I like to make sure that that gear action is moving nice and fluid. And there you can see that it's going really nicely. So now that my follow focus is attached, I'm going to go ahead and put my matte box on. So there's a couple different styles of matte box that you can attach to a cinema rig. I'd say the most common is one that goes right on the rails. But what we're going to be using today is actually what's called a mini matte box, and it's going to go right on the front of the lens. So I'll show you how to do it. It's really simple. The first thing you need is this adapter ring. It comes with the kit. And we're just going to screw this right onto our filter ring on the front of the camera. Make sure it's nice and tight. And then our matte box has this little toggle on the side. So we want to make sure it's in the down position. And that's just going to loosen and tighten this ring. So what we're going to do is put that right on the lens. And then I'm just going to pull that toggle up and tighten that ring. And that's all there is to it. It's a really simple way to attach it. And then I've got my little eyelid there if we want to get rid of a lens flare, and we can swap in and out our different filters. So our rig is looking really good. The next thing we're going to do is attach our power supply. All right, so to power our cinema rig, I'm going to be using a V-mount battery. So if you're not familiar with V-mount batteries, these are big, robust batteries. It's called a V-mount here. You can see it's got this V-shaped mounting plate. And they have a output called a D-tap, and you can convert the D-tap power into a lot of different things. So you can power a lot of different accessories with just one battery, which is really nice when you've got a few things running that require power. So what we've got to do is get this attached to our rig and get it hooked up to our camera. So the first thing we're going to do to get it attached to the rig is use one of these little battery mounting plates. So this plate is very, very simple. It's just going to mount right onto our rails and tighten up. So once that's tightened up, I'm going to go ahead and get my battery and mount it into my plate. So it just goes in and then clicks into place. So the first thing I'm going to power up is my camera, and I'm actually going to do that with a USB cable. So I'm going to do what's called a trickle charge on the battery, which means we can let this battery be in operation and sort of charge it at the same time. Now these are not one-to-one. I've found that the input and the output aren't perfectly matched. So over a long enough shoot, you'll actually see your battery start to slowly drain, but nowhere near as fast if it was just the battery itself. So generally on a shoot, I'll put 100% battery in and trickle charge. Just keep a little eye on that, and almost always it does everything I need. So USB in, and then I'm just going to plug this into the side of my camera here, and that's going to be powering up our camera. And then I've also got a D-tap to 12 volt adapter that I'm going to use to power up my monitor. And so I'm just going to plug this guy into the top of the battery and then run that into my monitor. And that's it for power. So power supply is pretty darn easy in this. And I've also got an HDMI cable that I'm going to run from my monitor. So I might as well plug that in. And I'm also going to use this handy little HDMI kind of cable wrangler that's on the back of this monitor to make sure that doesn't pop out. Lock it in. And now we've got power running to trickle charge our camera battery. We've got our D-tap power running into our monitor, and we've got our HDMI cable running from our monitor and then into the camera. So everything is hooked up. One little pet peeve of mine when I'm using these rigs is I don't like all these cables kind of hanging out all over the place. So I'm just gonna wrangle those up. I tend to like to bundle them up and run them along the handle. Then I'll kind of use this area between the battery and the camera to kind of keep all my cables in one convenient spot. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. All right, our cables are wrangled, our power is running, our HDMI is running. The only thing I haven't done is put this little sunshade on our monitor. And now I have. Now we're done. So that's our cinema rig. We have completely transformed this camera. Front to back, we've added power, versatile grips, field monitor, lens. We've put on our little follow focus. This thing is now ready to go, and the thing that I love about these rigs is you can change this configuration to whatever suits your needs. So I hope this inspires you. I hope you go out and build your own, and really thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.